So today we are remembering Lucretia Mott, and we're going to have an 1800s style picnic with my friend who is a Quaker scholar, and he is a member of the meeting that I attend, the Quaker meeting, and his name is Chuck Fager. So he is an expert on Lucretia Mott. If you're new here, I am Stevie Lynn, and welcome to Savoring Her Story, where food meets feminism and we celebrate the women who've made this world more human through curiosity, radical love, hospitality, and persistence. Lucretia Mott loved corn pudding. She had strong opinions about corn pudding, and we know about this because she wrote a letter to a magazine telling them that they weren't doing it right. So today we are going to be making a dairy-free version of a pudding that she might have eaten, 1830s, might have been eaten in Philadelphia. Because this is a vegetarian channel and I do avoid dairy, but I'll sometimes use eggs if my neighbor brings me some eggs from her backyard chickens, who are treated very nicely. And today we are going to be using eggs because we're making that corn pudding. I don't really imagine it without eggs. I'm sure there's egg substitutes that she could use, but I haven't tested them. I imagine that the just egg product, I bet that will work, but I wouldn't use flaxseed binders or anything. I don't think that would work in a good way. This recipe is based off of a mid-19th century Quaker cookbook, so it is probably very similar to what she would have eaten. So we're going to need 4 cups of fresh corn. I'm not sure how many cobs of corn that will be, but we'll see. We need 4 eggs. This is a whole cup of full-fat oat milk, but I also have a cup of cashew cream in it. It's very rich. And I made the cashew cream by soaking half a cup of cashews for about an hour and then blending it with another half a cup of water to make a full cup. So we've got 2 cups of rich plant-based milk, basically. So the recipe calls for about a half a cup of sugar. I'm actually using a little less. And the reason why is because we're going to be having a picnic. I'm going to be serving this right by some pickled strawberries that are kind of sweet, kind of savory. And I want the corn pudding to kind of match that level of sweetness and savory and not be too sweet. Pinch of salt. My husband makes these salt cellars. And we're going to melt about a half a cup of plant-based butter. I really like this Miyoko's plant-based butter. So it's basically half of this butter. This is going to be really rich. I'm going to melt it in this since we're being all 19th century. And I'm going to use this casserole dish. It said to use a small, I don't know, like a 8x8 pan or a small casserole dish. I think this is a small casserole dish. So we're also going to add a little pinch of nutmeg to it. I've got the oven set to 325 degrees. It's going to cook for about 60 to 75 minutes. So we're going low and slow. I want to see how many cups I get out of 1 ear of corn. This is bicolor sweet corn from North Carolina. So it looks like I'm getting 1 cup of corn per cob. So we need about 4 cobs. Easy math. Okay, so we got 4 corns a cob, 4 cobs of corn, and I'm using a shallow bowl just to keep the ears of corn from popping out. If this is 4 cups, this is a 4 cup measuring cup. Yeah, that's good. Okay, good. It's not part of the recipe, but I am going to mash up some of the corn. And the reason why is because the recipe says to either cut the ears off the cob, or you can use a grater to grate them. So I'm just going to smash like a quarter of the corn just to get some creaminess and some interesting texture. Gotta get all the threads out too. I'm just putting it in there so it doesn't curdle the eggs. Pinch of nutmeg, a little salt, and the corn. Easy peasy. Very easy. I'm taking a little bit of the oil, the butter from the pan, and just greasing this a little bit. It's very simple. So I'll check it in an hour. What we want is it for it to be golden brown on top, and then it should be clean if we stick a toothpick in it. So I baked this for about 70 minutes, and this is what it looks like. Lucretia Mott was a radical Quaker abolitionist and women's rights pioneer who helped lay the groundwork for both the end of slavery and the fight for women's equality. It's starting to rain a little bit. So every protest that we attend, every vote that we cast, every time we as women get to speak without permission, we can thank Lucretia Mott for that. Before she was an abolitionist, before she helped launch the women's movement, and before she could stand in front of a crowd full of male slaveholders and speak her truth without flinching, Lucretia Coffin was just a girl growing up on Nantucket, born January 3rd, 1793, on a wind-whipped island off the coast of Massachusetts. It's about 20-something miles out. Nantucket was covered in cranberry bogs and Quaker meetings. She was raised in a whaling village where men were gone for years at a time off to sea. Her dad was actually a sea captain, and they would go off hunting sperm whales, which was a huge industry at the time because it provided the oil for the lamps and electricity and all of that. That meant that women were the ones who were holding it all together for years at a time. Like they managed whatever was going on in church, the bills, they had their own businesses. Like they just managed everything. Farms, the families, the schools. I don't think they really had farms, but they had gardens. They were just a whaling village and they really didn't have a lot of farms. The women were handling everything, and they were handling it for years on end. They were the heads of the households. And when the men came back, they pretty much gave them their thrones, but not necessarily the responsibility. So it wasn't a matriarchy theoretically, but it was in practice. So Lucretia grew up thinking that women were in charge. And not only that, she was a Quaker in an Orthodox meeting house where it was ministered by women. She would give vocal ministry herself. So she got really used to standing in front of people and speaking her truth. She also grew up not thinking that femininity was like a delicate thing, because all the women around her were sturdy, practical, honest, educated, and wise. Lucretia's mother, Anna, she was a strong and very devout Quaker who managed the family store while also raising 8 children. She taught Lucretia how to think critically, work hard, and trust her conscience. And Lucretia admired her deeply. So her father, Thomas, who I mentioned before, was a sea captain. He would be gone for very long stretches. So her moral center came from the women around her, especially in the silence of the Quaker meetings. She learned that if the Spirit moved you, you stood and spoke. No minister, no permission, just truth. This is the world that she came from. And that's where she got her voice that she is known for. So at age 11, her family left Nantucket to move to Boston. Her father had another opportunity, and then they later moved to Philadelphia, where she was sent to the 9 Partners Quaker boarding school in New York. And it was there that she met her husband, James Mott. He was a fellow student, and he would become her lifelong partner. So they married in 1811 and settled in Philadelphia, where they raised 6 children. And James was very supportive. He totally supported her work, her preaching, and her public speaking. Eventually, she became a minister in her own meeting in Philadelphia, but she would also be a traveling minister as well. Yeah, so it was just a rare dynamic in that time. The husband would be so supportive. So he also ran a fair trade cotton business, and that was a business that didn't profit from slavery. Like, they were very conscientious. They were Hicksite Quakers by this time, and the Hicksites really believed not so much in the Bible, like they liked the Bible, but they were more led by their inner light. They saw that there was God in everyone, and they followed their conscience. And their conscience told them that slavery was bad and that they shouldn't support it in any possible way ever. So they boycotted any industry that profited off of slavery. So their shared values became the foundation of their home. By her 20s, she was kind of a famous Quaker minister. You know what? She didn't write a script ahead of time. Everything was inspired, as it was supposed to be back then amongst the Hicksites when giving vocal ministry. So she began to travel to different meetings, encouraging others to listen to their inner light. This idea shaped everything she did. If every person had divine worth, then slavery, war, patriarchy, and poverty weren't just wrong, they were spiritual failures. In 1827, the Society of Friends split. Lucretia, who was once an Orthodox, she now sided with the Hicksite branch. So as I mentioned before, that she was a Hicksite. She was Orthodox before. The Orthodox Quakers believed more in the literal take of the Bible. They were also more likely to be like Trinitarian and believe in hell. But she also didn't necessarily believe in heaven or hell, in the same way that the Orthodoxy did. She didn't think people were going to be punished. She actually felt that everybody just had the light of God within them, and inner light mattered more than strict adherence to scripture or church authority. They were not hierarchical, at least in theory. So the Hicksites were more open to reform and more likely to take a public stand against slavery. After that split, that was a turning point for her. She rejected any religion that justified injustice. She became more public, more outspoken, and more involved in the abolitionist movement. In 1833, she helped found the American Anti-Slavery Society alongside William Lloyd Garrison. That same year, she and other women, black and white, formed the Philadelphia Female Anti-Slavery Society. This wasn't just a support group. They fundraised, circulated petitions, published literature, and held public meetings, even when it meant facing violent opposition. This burning building was called the Pennsylvania Hall, and it was constructed to serve as a meeting place for abolitionists. But it was burned down during a meeting of the Second Anti-Slavery Convention of American Women on May 16, 1838, just 4 days after its opening, by a mob outraged at the quote and unquote promiscuous intermingling indoors and out of blacks and whites. Mott was often called on to speak in towns where black abolitionists couldn't do it themselves safely. like down in the South. Her presence disarmed some crowds because she was very feminine and petite, 5 feet and 90 pounds.
She was known as a woman of gentle and refined manners, but with force of character.
She was also known for her grace and eloquence. Just like nowadays, she faced hecklers, threats, and mobs. Still, she kept going. There was nothing that could stop her. She believed in this thing called moral persuasion, what she called enlightening the conscience. She believed that that was more powerful than violence. So she was really part of nonviolent resistance. So this is how she got involved with the women's movement, with the suffragettes. In 1840, she was invited to attend the World Anti-Slavery Convention in London. And she sailed over there. I don't know how long it took. It took a while. I think it took months. So it was a big deal. So she sailed across the Atlantic with James, her husband, and a bunch of others. Once she got there to attend the convention, she was told that women were not allowed to speak or sit as delegates.
The Credentials Committee ruled that women were constitutionally unfit for public and business meetings.
So she had to go into like this private room, which was absolutely ridiculous. Could you imagine that? Traveling, to be invited and then traveling all that way for like a month, only to be told that you cannot participate. Anyway, that's where she met Elizabeth Cady Stanton. And you might know who she is because she's a very prominent suffragette. The two of them had to sit in a gallery behind a curtain, totally excluded. It was because of their meeting, because they were pushed aside at that meeting, that they started talking and they started planning the American suffragette movement. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, a sharp, outspoken young woman, newly married, who had a mind of her own and a very fierce sense of justice. Lucretia became her mentor, planting the ideas and principles that would shape Stanton's future as a leader of the American suffragist movement, which Lucretia Mott would also play a part in. So 8 years later, yes, it took about 8 years. In 1848, Stanton and Mott organized the Seneca Falls Convention in New York. So we're getting into suffragette history now. The first women's right convention in the U.S. history. Together, they drafted the Declaration of Sentiments, which was modeled off of the Declaration of Independence, demanding equal rights for women in education, property, religion, and the vote. 68 women and 32 men signed it. So we had allies back then too. Mott had to be convinced that women should get the vote. It's not that she didn't think that women deserved it, but it had more to do with her moral suasion.
So moral suasion was the idea that real change comes from conscience, persuasion, and moral example, not from political power or state mechanisms, which she would have considered to be a band-aid solution.
And ultimately, she ended up signing the document anyway. She did support it. So Lucretia's work didn't stop with speeches and meetings. Her home in Philadelphia became a place of radical hospitality. She opened her doors to Black leaders, Native visitors, poor travelers, and reformers of all stripes. She even hosted Frederick Douglass regularly. They weren't just allies, they were close friends. And they didn't always agree either, but they did listen to each other. Great people don't often agree, but they do listen to each other. She welcomed Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, and countless others. So for Mott, abolition and feminism were never really separate causes. They were threads of the same cloth. Like the fact that they both existed was a moral failure. When Civil War broke out, Mott was torn. She despised slavery most of all, but she remained a pacifist too. Remember, she's a Quaker, and she believed that violence corrupted even the most righteous cause. It's kind of like if the revolution is violent, you're going to have to defend it through violence. If you live by the sword, you'll die by the sword. So after the war, she pushed hard for full citizenship for freed people. She supported Black suffrage, education, and land ownership. She also spoke out against white feminists who tried to exclude Black men from their voting rights. Even well into her 70s, she hosted meetings in her home. She fought for prison reform, Native rights, and temperance because she saw that all systems of domination were connected. So in her final years, Lucretia Mott lived to see the 19th Amendment introduced. That's the women's right to vote. And though she died in 1880, she died knowing that the tide was turning. So the 19th Amendment was introduced in Congress in 1878, but it didn't really gain real traction until decades later, and it wasn't ratified until 1920. So neither she or Elizabeth Cady Stanton actually got to live to see that happen. But that didn't really matter. She was doing the work to get it done. She was never interested in personal fame. She believed in duty, not ego. And in her own words, she was just a plain woman of plain speech. But her impact was anything but plain. She imagined a world without domination. No kings, no slaveholders, no husbands above wives, no clergy above conscience. And she lived every single day as if that world were already possible. Doesn't it kind of taste like Captain Crunch?
No, we just ate a little corn. Tastes like cooked corn.
These are well, the label came off. They got smeared, but it's strawberry, pickled strawberry
beer.
Fake beer. Hopefully they don't come and arrest us. I've been doing a lot of that lately. We are having a picnic. This is my friend, Chuck Fager. He's from my meeting house. And we are having an 1840's style picnic that would be like something that Lucretia Mott might enjoy. We got the corn pudding that we made together the other day. These pickled strawberries, they can be like eaten with the corn pudding or as by themselves. And then these are just cannellini beans with apple cider vinegar, olive oil, and I use parsley and thyme from my garden.
You gave me some questions.
I know.
I printed them out. 1818, 1819, something like that.
Yeah.
She was recognized and recorded as being a minister. That is to say, she wasn't paid. It wasn't a professional position. It was a recognition by the body of the meeting that she was in at that time. It was Philadelphia yearly meeting, that she had a gift for preaching.
Right.
And the way she established that is by standing up in the meeting and preaching and getting favorable feedback. She did it as a young mother. She never wrote down what she spoke.
Yeah.
She never did preparation, and you were not supposed to prepare. You were supposed to be moved immediately at the time. Well, of course, she lived in a world where stuff was going on, so her thinking and stuff was affected by stuff that was going on. Keep in mind, they didn't have TV or podcasts and social media. Going to your church and hearing somebody preach was a big entertainment deal, as well as lots of other things. And
totally see that.
93 or 94, I did a workshop at Friends General Conference about Lucretia, and I got the book at that time, which had a lot of her sermons in it, her messages, because various people started sending in stenographers to take down her messages. Some of them because they admired her, and some of them because they wanted to get evidence to use against her.
Okay.
So she was preaching bad.
So I have to say about Lucretia Mott, just that I've been studying about her all week, she feels like my spirit animal. Like I so relate to her. She is so convicted, and she has this quirk, you could say, because it's a quirk nowadays, her moral suasion, the fact that she did not really believe in necessarily even changing the laws. She wanted to change the hearts of people, and she felt that it didn't matter unless you actually morally changed people at their core. And I feel the same way too, and I run into troubles all the time. And it's not even that I just run into troubles, is I don't know how to tell a slant. I don't know how, because you can't approach people as a preacher. You have to give them candy or something to want, to aspire to. And nobody aspires to morality necessarily.
Anything I write and I want people to read has to compete for a very precious limited commodity, namely reader attention.
But it's also like setting up a carrot stand where you're charging like $1 for a bunch of carrots right next to an ice cream stand where it's all subsidized by ads and you get it for free. Everybody's going to go get the ice cream, and they're not going to go to the carrots because that means work. I mean, if there's a little work involved, forget it. How did she handle that? Or was that even an issue back then? Or
Yes, it was an issue.
More morality, more aspirational? I'm going to say one more thing. Because she did not believe in the punishment of hell either. So this wasn't something that she could lord, like that she couldn't pressure people or motivate people.
You're going down. Yeah.
Yeah, she couldn't say that. So hell wasn't an option, and neither was heaven. Not really, like heaven on earth. Maybe I'm not sure if I understand her theology.
I was mainly interested in, like, the Sermon on the Mount. Mm-hmm. Those were the important and the most meaningful ones. This other stuff, she called it various other kinds of names. She was very scornful of it, although she was one of the most compelling public speakers in the U.S.
Yeah.
We've lost her voice. We don't have any idea what the voice had to be a big part of it.
Right. We don't have any recording of her voice.
Was it high? Was it low?
Yeah.
She was a small person.
Yeah. She was like 5 feet, maybe less, and about 90 pounds.
Like well, she was something like 78 pounds when she was near death. Probably started wasting away after her husband died. Mm-hmm. That would be, a theory, a hypothesis.
Right. I read that the reason why she was such a good speaker was because she grew up basically in like woman's land, and you even told me this, like the women took care of everything. They managed the meeting house, they managed the finances.
They had businesses of their own.
They did everything. And they gave vocal ministry, like where they would speak up in the meeting house.
They took care of the meeting's business when most of the men were gone. The business, these meetings, I've seen a building that was a meeting house on Nantucket. Mm-hmm. It's not a meeting house anymore. It was a theater, a movie theater, and maybe you could do plays in it. It held several hundred people. Yeah. And so...
Wow.
And that wasn't the only meeting house. And Nantucket's a little island. She had a phobia about writing stuff down, especially for publication.
Interesting.
She never wrote any of her speeches. We have some because people copied them listening to them.
Okay, one last thing too, because I bet you were wondering how the picnic went. How was our 1840s food from Pennsylvania? Quaker food. Okay. Well, I'm going to be honest here. The strawberries were okay. I thought they were okay. My husband nearly threw them up because he can't do apple cider vinegar. He doesn't like fruit. And I want to read what Chuck said. He said, "I wasn't grossed out by the strawberries. I'm friendly to vinegar in moderation. The corn pudding was good. The bean salad was promising. But the best was the vegan pimento cheese," which I actually bought. And it's so good. It's by a company called Dairy, D-A-R-E, with the little 2 dots over the E to make it dairy. And it's really, really delicious. It's a local company. So the bean salad was boring. Like, it was texturally boring. It needed crunchy things. It needed some celery. And, I would have put in a bunch of crunchy things. I personally would have put in seeds, like sunflower seeds, celery. If I had radishes hanging around, I would put in some radishes. Just get some, like, crunchy texture stuff. I would have put in a little bit more mustard and maybe some tahini or something with a little water to get it like creamy. I would have treated it like a potato salad, basically, and that would have been really good. Yeah, so the food was a little too simple, I would say. I even, put in extra herbs, more herbs in the recipe required, but it was still kind of... But the corn pudding was good. Corn pudding was simple, but it was good. I thought it tasted like Captain Crunch. Like it was like Captain Crunch pudding. Right. I just thought you should know that. So you'll know. Bye.